As we commemorate Women's Month, let's look at representation in political spaces. Data from UN Women shows that women are underrepresented at all levels of decision-making worldwide, and that achieving gender parity in political life is still far off. Now joined by political stalwart Dr Makhosi Khoza. Dr Khoza, happy Women's Month and thanks for speaking to us. How would you describe
Thank you very much for having me.
Ma'am, how would you describe...
And happy Women's Month to all women at home.
Appreciate that, and as do the women that are watching on the channel. How would you describe the current state of women's participation in the political sphere in South Africa?
You know, the challenge with women's, the issues that affect women is that when you have competing priorities, they tend to take a back seat. Like, for example, with all this GNU, I think the ANC is going to have a problem in implementing its 50% policy, because they can't dictate that policy on other parties to say, hey, we need 50% representation. So I think it's very difficult right now for women, because our voices are really not heard. And especially now, I mean, we've just lost Nkosazana Zuma, you've lost Dr. Naledi Pandor. You know, those are women with a lot of substance, a lot of content, and they are role models to most women. And I do think that we've got to do a lot more in making sure that women are represented in all spheres of life, basically, not just in politics, but even in business.
Dr. Khoza, you talk about the voice of the women not being heard. Are the voices there? And the reason I ask that question, which may seem ironic, is that a huge number of, in fact, the greater part of the population is women, right? How often are women voting women into positions of influence, in positions of power, for instance? So if we look at the political landscape, right, how many women are voting for other women?
Well, that's a very big challenge. It's a very big challenge. I mean, if you look at the profile of political parties that are in parliament right now, if I'm not mistaken, only good, Delil's party is women-led. And I don't think we have done sufficient, in fact, even as the organizations, the women's formations, we have not done sufficient groundwork in terms of conscientizing women about the critical importance of them, you know, putting other women in the positions of power. It's something that has to do with social awareness. And I don't think that we are at that stage yet. And we keep on making gains, but we also lose them because we are not even united as different political formations. I'm talking about women's political formations. We need to start uniting as women's political formations so that every political party has the voice of women is respected. You are not dependent on one political party. If that political party is voted out of power, then you are back, you know, back on ages ago when we had to talk about women representation. Because right now we are at the basics. We have to go back to the basics. Women representation is no longer there.
So where are the conversations, or who should be having those conversations, right? You've talked about Dr. Nkosazana Zuma. You've talked about Naledi Pandor, right? Are these two incredible women who are great illustrations or examples of the few women that have gone ahead of the others and dominated and shown great capacity, having conversations with you, with other women, to encourage that sense of belief, if that is what is missing to get women to the table?
You know, the biggest challenge is competing priorities. You know, in as much as I am saying what I'm saying about Nkosazana Zuma and Naledi Pandor, and possibly even Lindiwe Sisulu, the challenge is that when they are given a certain portfolio, they will be focusing on that portfolio, and the issues that are affecting women take a back seat somehow. And I do think that there is an opportunity now that they are outside. They are no longer in government. Maybe it's about time that these particular women, they actually reach out, they run programs that are like really passing the baton, because it's no use of us getting all this experience in politics and we die with it. Leave it with others that are going to take over. So I think we have a responsibility. I'm also doing my part where I am within the resources that I have. But I do think that as women who are experienced in the political field, because it's very hostile towards women. Believe you me, it's very, very hostile towards women. So I think we have a role to play in terms of conscientizing our women and even training those that are in parliament, building their capacity so that they are able to articulate these issues in those spaces of influence.
Dr. Khoza, I'm going to draw some inspiration from Madiba. And Madiba talked about sport and how sport has the power to unite, right, and to build resolve, and many other analogies that you use around sport. Now, a few years ago, women did not earn as much as men in sport on the global stage. The tide has shifted massively. Right, so if you play in the WTA, women's tennis, or versus the ATP, the earnings are the same across multiple sports. What are the lessons that can be learnt by women today in pushing the women agenda from areas where women have succeeded?
The biggest mistake that we can make as women is to confine the issues of gender, and confine them to women. I think if we are going to be looking at the gender issues, addressing the issue of patriarchy, is also to get those issues mainstreamed in everything. Let's say if it's sports, whether it's church, or whatever, wherever you have spaces where you have a lot of people, these issues must be part of the agenda. And I think sports can play a major, major role. Maybe the mistake that we are making is also confining the issues of gender to women who are politicians. Probably we also needed to take some women that are very influential. I was listening to Unathi as a good example. Unathi is not a politician, but she's a phenomenal young woman, and I think if we give those people as well the platform, because they reach out to many audiences, I do think that we will eventually, this issue will not be coming up as often as it does. And women, you are absolutely right. They are earning, some households, women are even earning better than their husbands, and unfortunately, because that comes with its own challenges as well, because sometimes divorces arise because of those gaps as well. Because men are used to being the providers and so forth. And I think there is a lot of catching up that we have to do, all of us. And we must not confine the issues of women to just women's formation, but to across all activities and formations that we have in society.
Dr. Khoza, very quickly, I'm out of time. What do we need to be teaching our daughters today to prepare them for tomorrow?
One of the things that, because, I love languages. One of the things that we are not doing, African languages, they don't discriminate on gender, Tina, we don't have she or he and those kinds of things. And ensuring that these issues find their way in the curriculum at school is very, very important. And even using our own languages as tools of educating young people, and use them as tools of doing all other things that engender a culture of coexistence, tolerance with the femicide that we have in South Africa, it's very important that we start going back to the drawing board. Because if you have women leading, I do believe that women have a better capacity of understanding society than men. I know that may sound controversial, but that is a fact. Wherever you have a woman who is the head of the household, most of the time you will find that the family remains intact. But where there is no woman in that household, most of the time you will find that that household collapses. So this issue of women is about the health of society. It's very, very important, because that if we elevate our women, we are building nations.